Welcome to the Expert in You Showcase, the show where we bring you quick, powerful conversations with elite entrepreneurs and other professional business experts to share their best strategies, secrets, and tips to help you have more success in your business and life. I'm your host, Carden, and this show is brought to you by Expert in You, where we empower professional entrepreneurs, business owners, and experts to become influential figures and celebrities in their markets and add 6 to 7 figures with more ease. Discover a game-changing secret that attracts leads, qualifies them effortlessly, warms them up for your offer, and hands them over ready to say yes. We want to make closing deals for you a breeze. It's time to stop chasing clients and consistently fill your calendar with highly qualified conversations and sales opportunities every month. Increase your influence, impact, and accelerate your income and strategies that work. Book your business accelerator call with me now at acarden.com and let's map out your next step. Today, I am excited for my guest. I have Dr. Laura Sicola, who is a cognitive linguist. Did I say that right?
Yes, that is the official background.
Perfect. She is basically a translation coach. So we are going to dive into that, how she got into this, but she really closes the gap so that you get more yeses. And she works mainly with executives, with senior level executives, helping them really influence. So Dr. Laura, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for inviting me, Anne. It's a pleasure to be here.
I'm excited to talk to you. I think what you do is really interesting. Just tell the audience a little bit about your background, how you got into this, and then how long you've been doing this.
Sure, I'd be happy to. And just to qualify one point that you used an interesting expression, that I'm a translation coach, so to speak. And I just want to make sure people understand that it's not translation from Spanish to English or something along those lines. It's translating the movie in your mind that's clear to you, to whoever is thinking, and making sure that when it comes out, whoever's listening gets it. Translating from your brain to their ears and theirs, so to speak. So that's really the big gap for most of us. I always say that the biggest gap in the world is the 3 inches between our brains and our mouths.
Isn't that true? I mean, communication, how often do we say things and the other person takes it wrong or it doesn't come out the right way or they misunderstand? Yes.
Yes.
So I love this. This is interesting. I'm excited to hear sort of your strategies and your tips on this. Yeah. So how did you get into this and how long have you been doing it?
I've always been into communication, education, was a school teacher in my former life of sorts. And my intention was to actually go in the academic route. I did my PhD at University of Pennsylvania and looking at how speech is processed in the brain. How do people learn? What is it that makes what you say go in to someone's ear and stick versus coming out the other side, as it were? And, we all have those moments where we go, that sounded better in my head.
Yes.
I think that's pretty relatable. So how do we fix that? How do we make sure that what comes out sounds as good out of our heads as it does when it's still in our heads, and that it lands with intentionality and with clarity and looks the same to them as it looks to us? And about 15 years ago, I kind of had a few serendipitous opportunities and realized that maybe the tenure track as a professor was not really what I was called to, which was originally the intent. And I had an opportunity to do some consulting work for a couple of Fortune 100 companies that effectively fell out of the sky at about the same time. And I figured that was the universe's way of
it finds you, right?
Great big yellow blinking arrow pointing down a different path. So I figured that was clear enough to go. And I've never looked back. I really love it. It was a heck of an on-ramp to trial by fire as far as entrepreneurship is concerned, because I'm not a business person. I'm not from corporate. So going from academia, research, linguistics, cognition, all that kind of stuff to, okay, now how do I get my next client? Because the sky stopped raining Fortune 100 companies pretty soon thereafter. And then it was just a going from there and figuring out, okay, how do I take my superpower, my knowledge, my expertise and brand it in a way, package it in a way, label it in a way that someone else can say, oh, I get why I should pay you for that. I think that's something we all struggle with as entrepreneurs, isn't it?
It is. And I help people do that actually because they can't figure that piece out. And it is really hard to do it for yourself. How
Yes.
long did it take you, Dr. Laura, to kind of figure that out for yourself? What was that path for you?
There have been a couple of iterations, sort of major
Hmm.
stages along the way. I would say the first one was really about 5 years. And it was because where I had come from, the immediate leap to business world, let's just say I wasn't aware of terms like um, executive presence and
Right.
leadership communication, executive coaching. My older
Hmm.
son is in college now, but a couple of years ago when he was applying for schools, trying to decide what to major, and he said, did you always know that this is what you wanted to do? I said, honey, I didn't know what I do now was a thing until somebody offered to pay me to do it.
Right.
So you have to be open to seeing what the universe says. But it was really around 2013 or so when I started learning those phrases and understanding that people would take
Mhm.
what I do and under the umbrella of talent development, leadership development, executive presence, talent retention. You're like, these are the areas of need. And so I
Mhm.
started learning how to give it, how to package it in a way that people who were looking for it could find it and knew how many zeros to put after it, which is a really important detail as we are.
Exactly.
Yes.
I love that. Yeah, and so I love you. I love the brand speaking to influence. I think
Mhm.
that, and that's so relevant in the marketplace today as well. Do you, so you kind of did that iteration 5 years in.
Mhm.
Is what you're doing now for the most part about the same, or have you seen with market changes, have you had to do some other changes in your business and shifts as well?
There was one other major shift about a year ago, actually. And when I did that original shift, 12 years ago, I lab under the world of executive presence, which I just learned about. There are a lot of people who do that in one way, shape,
Hmm.
or form. But because I'm a linguist and voice and speech and tonality and all of those things are really a niche for me. And it's something
Hmm.
that no one was doing back then. They would talk about your authentic voice, but they meant it metaphorically.
Right.
And
Right.
they weren't looking at how the way you use your instrument makes a massive difference in how people receive you and receive your message, how they respond. And so I wanted to capitalize on that. So I branded the company then as Vocal Impact Productions, which made
Mm.
sense for a variety of reasons. And I liked the
Right.
acronym, the VIP. But and while that worked for a while, over time, as my skill set expanded and my brand grew, what was the engine then was becoming an anchor because people would say things like, "Oh, you should talk to Laura. She's a voice coach. And I'd go,
Mm.
"Oh
Right.
no." Then they'd start asking things like, "So, are you a singer? Are you an actor?" Ooh, no, that was bad. That I was getting
Hmm.
pigeonholed into something that people saw as a very narrow trainer of something. So I had to shed that. And I realized, like with Brene Brown and Tony Robbins and so many of those other leaders out there, they don't have corporate labels on them, so to speak. You just go by Brene Brown or Tony
Right.
Robbins. You don't, I mean, Simon Sinek has the Optimism Company, but does anybody, have you ever heard somebody say, hey, you should do some research with the Optimism Company? You should see what resources
Right.
they have. No, it's like, have you read
Right.
Simon Sinek's book? He's the brand. I don't know why he has that other
Yes.
company name. So similarly, I am the brand for my company. So I figured let's just
Hmm.
shed the wrapping paper. And now it's just Laura Sicola Inc.
Yes, I love it. So I think that, and there's some real gold nuggets in here for everyone too. He wasn't afraid to make that shift and make that change. And sometimes entrepreneurs hold themselves back. They're like, but I've done all of that work and I've put so much into that. And then they're afraid to actually make a change that can leap them forward so much faster and can be so much more impactful. So I love that you shared that. And you have to be open to that. And you really have to listen to what is going on around you and respond and not get stuck like, no, I'm I want to stay here because that's
Yes.
ultimately not, it doesn't work. And the market's always shifting, always changing, and you have to stay relevant with the market as well.
Yes.
So I'm glad you shared that. You kind of took what was a challenge and you turned it into really a greater opportunity and a bigger opportunity. Personal
Yes.
brands have never been so important as they
Yeah.
are in the marketplace today as well. So
100%.
so I think that's really important. So how do you personally get your clients now? What do you do to get clients in the corporate sector? I know a lot of coaches and consultants out there are going after the corporate clients. What do you do?
Number one, referrals are
Hmm.
always valuable when you're in the middle of an engagement or at the end of an engagement. If they're not going to re-up for some reason or other, always ask who are two people that that I should meet. That's one of my
Hmm.
favorite questions. It's not like, do you know anybody else who can use my services or do whatever else?
Right.
I like to leave it open a little bit
Hmm.
so it doesn't feel quite as salesy, and because you never know where their brains are going to go. When I
Hmm.
leave it as who are two amazing people that you think I need to meet, their brains will sometimes it's I think this person or this company might be you find your service useful. Sometimes it's a hey, you should meet this person. You should meet Anne. She's a podcast host. She's got this amazing program, and I think you'd be a great fit for that. Okay. And
Hmm.
maybe it's for something else. So asking for introductions, not being afraid to do so, I think is really important. I also was very fortunate. I have a TED Talk that has it's been out for about 10 years now, but it is the accidental gold mine of sourcing for prospects because it's got about 7 million views now. And I never could have imagined that. So people are
That's amazing.
regularly stumbling over it in Google searches, YouTube searches, those
Hmm.
kinds of things. So if anybody's curious, it's called Want to Sound Like a Leader? Start by
I was
saying your
just going to
name
say,
right.
tell us the title. Yes. So
So
it's want to
it's a
sound
fun
like a
little
leader. What?
start by saying your name right.
Oh, so good.
Yeah,
So
so
good.
it's a fun little 15-minute piece, but it really gets to the heart of where there is that gap between what the message sounds like in your mind and how it
Hmm.
translates, to use your term, when it gets through to the other person or why it doesn't at all, for that matter. But a lot of people will stumble upon that and then do some research and go down the rabbit hole and find my website, which is great.
Yeah. I love this. As you were talking and talking about what you do, I thought, gosh, you could also be doing this in marriages. How many
I
times
do.
do you?
I
I
do
was thinking,
actually.
how many times do things come out wrong?
Yes, and that's honestly one of the, and I do a lot of speaking engagements. That's another
Hmm.
good piece where if anybody out there, if you consider yourself a thought leader, you have to prove it. People have to be able to
Hmm.
Google you and see pictures of you all over the place. They have to see that you're on podcasts, that you're speaking at
Right.
Chamber of Commerce events, or you're speaking at whatever kind of space that shows that someone else is interested in what you have to say. You're not just claiming that people like to hear what you have to say. So,
Absolutely.
and they
Yeah.
get to vet you, they get to test you out a little bit. They see your personality, they hear nuggets of your wisdom. So, any of that kind of thought leadership is important. But as far as the marriage and things, one of the things that I regularly tell my clients, whether it's in one-on-ones or from the stage, is what we work on in leadership, communication, influence, messaging is as relevant and valuable in your personal space as it is in
Hmm.
your professional because people are people. You just want to get to a different yes. It's just as valuable. I had a man come up to me once after a dinner event that I was speaking at, and he said, "You were my gift tonight because now I understand what is creating the tension between my wife and my teenage son."
Oh, so
Yes.
good. Well, relationships, that's what we're talking about here is how
Right.
to communicate in
Right.
relationships, whether that's
Exactly.
business or personal.
Correct. And
Yeah,
so
so
part of what I've ended up doing is through the Archdiocese of Philadelphia, through some other churches, and even with there's a Jewish philanthropy organization and whatnot. I've done some engagements for where I have a workshop that is specifically on communicating for couples pre-marriage, in marriage, those kinds of things. But you're absolutely right. It's just as relevant. And yep, they need it.
so
We need
good.
it, I should
Well,
say. I'm part of that group.
what are some of the common themes or some of the common challenges that you see senior executives have that you go in and help them with?
The biggest one is the expert's curse. And what I mean by that is that, and everyone out there listening, I'm sure we all has it as well, because we all do. We are experts in our field, whether it
Hmm.
is cybersecurity or fintech or executive coaching or whatever it happens to be. And we forget that it's not what is interesting and obvious and necessary to us is not interesting, obvious, necessary, or pre-understood by anybody else. So going back to that translation metaphor, they don't know how to translate their
Hmm.
vision in a way that it will get all the key stakeholders on board and rowing in the right direction, from the board to key clients to your team or your direct reports or whoever you report up to, clients, vendors. How do you get everyone on board and saying yes with your vision? Because if they're not all rowing in the same direction, it's not going to happen.
Right. Then that is where the speaking to influence comes in.
Yes.
She said, I help people influence, basically, to get those yeses.
Hi, friend. I have an exciting announcement. I hope you're enjoying this episode of Expert in You podcast, but I have to ask you, have you checked out the latest issue of Expert in You magazine yet? It's jam-packed with rich content, powerful strategies, inspiring stories, and so much more to help you elevate your business and personal growth. Don't miss out. Go grab your digital copy now and join our community of experts making a difference every day. Go to expertinyoumagazine.com and check out your digital copy today. Transform your expertise into success with Expert in You magazine. It's not just a publication, it is a movement.
Give us some tips or some tricks that people, some takeaways that they can use.
Sure. Here's a couple of very counterintuitive ones. Number one, if you want someone to think you're smart, the best way to do that is to make them feel smart by using the simplest language possible to make your concepts so crystal clear that they go, oh, got it. We tend to go in the other direction, especially when we're a little anxious and we want to prove ourselves. We're in the business development conversation. So we want to sound like we're the smartest person they could possibly hire for the best value. But then we use too much jargon. Our stories go too long. We give too many technical details, which they may or may not need, but kind of sounds impressive, at least in our own minds. And we end up kind of snowing them. There's a difference between when someone understands what you've said and when they get it.
Right.
You understand with your brain, you get it with your gut. And when you use all those big words and super detailed technical explanations, they will probably understand it. But when you make it crystal clear, they get it in their gut, and that moves mountains. So that's the big first one. And that was the hardest one for me to learn coming out of academia.
Right.
Years.
Because you're so smart and you're a doctor.
Well, they wouldn't let me be one unless I learned to use all those dumb big words. That was the rule. No, nothing less than 4 syllables. And I had to totally, they're like, could you just talk like a person now? We got it. You got the degree.
No, I love that you're talking about this, because we do the same thing when I'm helping people market their message and market their business and build their brand and all of those things. And I say, look, bring it down to a 3rd or 5th grade level. And they're like, I work with executives. I work with really smart people. I work with engineers. I work with doctors. I get that, except that doesn't sell. That doesn't influence. And so I love that you're actually bringing this up. So yes, it doesn't matter what level you're at. It doesn't matter who you're working with or who you're talking to. People do want to really be able to understand. And like you said, oh gosh, that's so clear. It's as simple as can be, right? It actually is bring it down to simple.
Well, and simple doesn't mean easy, right?
Right.
That's the key. It's not easy to get your message down to that crystal clear essence. And that's where we stumble. So I think it was Twain who said, I didn't have time to write you a short letter, so I wrote you a long one instead. It's very hard to be that concise and clear and compelling all at the same time. And here's another piece of that as far as tip is concerned. Talk in shorter sentences. I don't mean necessarily see spot run, but I do mean that when we get into our groove, we tend to talk in run-on sentences. We don't realize it, but you know what it's like when you get a text message from a friend or a colleague or whoever it is, and it's that missive that's you have to keep scrolling and scrolling to see. Exactly. Like your brain just goes, oh, no, you know what? And you just text back, dude, I can't read this. Call me. Like that. You don't even want to have to figure it out. That's how most people talk. There is no audible period anywhere in the middle of the scroll. There is no beginning and end of a single thought. It's just this stream of consciousness in babbling. And if you ever transcribed what you said, it's kind of horrifying when you try to.
Okay, guilty. I'm guilty.
Well, I've learned this the hard way. That's how I know it's true. So, but learning how to finish a point and then start your next sentence without connecting with and, so, but, and so, but. So being able to use short sentences, let people hear where it starts and ends, declarative with the vocal drop at the end, then a pause, like a little space bar. Start your next sentence from there. It just makes a difference. Then if you do need to use more technical jargon, more detail, bigger words, whatever it is, it gives their brain time to catch up with their ears. There's a concept, and this is one of the few little geek out moments I'll give you. Here's your technical piece. There's something called linguistic density or excuse me, lexical density, which is similar. But the idea is that the heavier the language you use, the more technical jargon, the bigger the words, the longer the processing delay is for people's brains to catch up with their ears. So if out of think of it, every 10 words, what proportion of them are simple, easy, small, basic? The more of those there are, proportionately in what you say, the faster you can talk and the easier people keep up with you. But if you're throwing in a lot of big verbal rocks in there, the car has to go slower to dodge the rocks, to maneuver them carefully without derailing. So it's uncomfortable to do that, to talk slower and more pauses if you need to throw all that stuff in. Otherwise, simplify, simplify, simplify.
So interesting you're saying this. And also one of the things that we would hear when people for speaking on stages, because I help people do that, we used to hear talk fast. It makes people have to keep up and pay attention, and it keeps them on their toes. What is your thought on that? And you're saying slow down and pause.
Well, okay, so it's not an either or. The key is variance. If you want to keep people's attention, you have to vary everything. And this goes back to voice and delivery, but also the content. There are times when you're going to speed up and you're going to be going because you're telling a story and there's momentum and you want to get there, but then you got to pause and shift gears, let it linger for a moment. And then there are other times when you need to talk a little bit slower and enunciate a little bit more. Times when you're going to go higher and lower, and times when you're going to keep it flatter. But there's so many different elements to the way that you use your voice in speaking. It is the variation that matters, that keeps them focused on you, on their edge. It's like when you're on the edge of their seats. Imagine your audience is on your roller coaster ride in the amusement park, and no one wants to be on the toddler's roller coaster, the little inchworm that just goes around in an oval kind of a thing. And same little 2-foot rise, 2-foot fall, 2-foot rise, 2-foot fall. No one's going to get on that ride. They're going to watch somebody else's kid on it and go, okay, hey, I got it. Don't need to be on it myself. And they're going to leave. A good roller coaster that keeps your attention is constantly keeping you on the edge of your seat, wondering what's around the next corner. Is it a drop, a loop, a spin, a twist, a corkscrew, something or other? And being able to vary things as the content evolves in whatever you're talking about, that's what keeps you sounding interesting in both your content and your delivery. It's not about, well, talk faster. Trust me, I'm a Jersey Italian. I have no problem talking fast. If anything, I have the opposite problem where I need to learn to slow down, where I can dust people easily more often than not, no matter what the content is. So I have to be measured and very, very conscious and deliberate in my tempo, in my pacing, in where I speed up, where I slow down, and even measuring things against, like, who is my host if I'm in an interview, or who's my guest if I'm the one doing the interview. If there are people who are much more soft-spoken and almost kinesthetic in the way that they talk, much more deliberate and intentional with every word choice, I can't be my Jersey girl self and just motor through, because the contrast will be like someone who doesn't know how to drive a manual transmission car. It's just that bucking stop start all over the place. If I'm with somebody who's super caffeinated, I want to make sure I keep up with them. Somebody, whoever's listening, if it's too fast, okay, they can hit the slow down the speed button and do it at 0.75. But it needs to match. There has to be, I'm not trying to imitate, that's not the same thing, but to mirror a little bit so that there's even flow and chemistry in the
Right.
conversation. Always, always, always think about who's your audience, who's the person you're communicating with, what's the topic, what is the mood you want to leave them with, how do you want to engage them? All those elements need to be intentional choices before deciding how to deliver your message.
Excellent. This is excellent. And by the way, you have no Jersey accent. I just want you to know. You have a very clear, deliberate way that you deliver. So this has been great. What would you like to leave the audience with today? What's one final thought?
Oh, let's see. One final thought is that I'm going to challenge everyone out there to record yourself in any conversation. If you're on the phone, record it. If you're doing a Zoom or a Teams meeting with someone, even if you're not allowed to hit record on that, just take your phone and hit record on the audio or the video just for 2 minutes. 2 minutes of you talking at some point, and then go back and transcribe. And yes, you can have you can have a lot of different apps do it for you, but if it's only 1 to 2 minutes, manually transcribe and just see what happens as you're typing it out. You will learn so much about yourself, about what you're doing that's effective, and where you want to do some shifting really, really fast. I tell my clients all the time, I cannot coach you until you see and hear what I see and hear. So we're going to start recording right now. And it'll open your mind and open your doors to so much more influence.
So good. I have this tendency to say, and I've caught myself doing that when we would transcribe things or when I would listen to something back, and I thought, I don't even know why I say that all the time, but yeah, it's so easy to catch mistakes like that and things that you do over and over again that you really don't even mean to do. Do you know that? You know that?
Yes, yes. And people will, I have to laugh because so many people will deny that they do something until they hear it. Even things like upspeak. Upspeak is that pattern where it sounds like you're asking questions because your voice
Yes,
goes
all the
up,
time.
like I'm doing right now.
Yes.
Exactly. And there are people I've worked with, especially men. I hate to tell you guys, it's not just a chick thing. A Y chromosome is not a vaccine against it. They're just as culpable as women are. But I had someone, we were talking about it, and he's like, well, but I don't think we need to work on that because, I can't, I'm a guy. And I thought, okay, your point is what? So we recorded, and 2 minutes is all it took. And he just went, oh, yep,
Right.
there we go. And he would have denied under oath
Mm-hmm.
that he would ever do something like that. Cause that's like a Valley Girl thing. No,
Mm-hmm.
sorry, hate to disappoint you. So
That's
record yourself.
interesting.
The video
That's a
camera, the
great,
audio does not lie.
that is a great takeaway and such a great exercise for everyone to take advantage of and really hone their skills. So good. This has been so much fun. I wish we had longer. I want to know really quickly if you could share, how do you typically work with your clients? And do you work with teams? Do you just work with the executives? What's sort of your business model?
Sure. There are three different main services. The one is
Okay.
executive coaching, which is one-on-one. It's a
Mm-hmm.
minimum of a vice president level, preferably SVP or CXO, chief whatever officer, depending on the size of the company. Different labels mean different things. And that's typically 6 or 12 months for
Mm-hmm.
coaching. I do team training. So if they've got a team already and they want to do a half day or full day workshop on all these things that we've been talking about today, then that is an option. There's a couple of key services there, different training programs and speaking engagements. So if anyone is looking for a keynote speaker, if an organization is looking for an MC for an event, looking for a moderator for panels, anything along those lines, I'm always happy to come in and do those as well.
Perfect. Do you have a book, Dr. Laura?
I do. And you know what? I don't have the new cover here, but the book is called Speaking to Influence, Mastering Your Leadership Voice. We republished it last year, and it's now with my new branding colors. So now it's purple and gold as opposed to the red and black. But Speaking to Influence, Mastering Your Leadership Voice. And it is available on Audible and Kindle as well.
Perfect.
I think the Audible is actually the best way to go because it's a chance to model.
You
so
can
many.
hear, right?
Yes. It's hard to
Yes.
describe voice in text.
Yes. No, that's great. And where can they get that?
Amazon or Audible,
Okay.
either way there. You can also go to speakingtoinfluence.com for more information about the book, or anything is also available on my website, which is simply laurasicola.com.
Perfect. And we will put all of that information in the show notes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for tuning in to Experting You Showcase. So happy New Year, everyone. And Dr. Laura, happy New Year. And thank you for being my guest.
Thank you, Ann.
If you are ready to attract high-paying clients like clockwork, build powerful influence and scale your business with ease, let's talk. Book a complimentary $1 Million Accelerator Strategy call at acarden.com to discover how the Expert in You method can help you create a steady stream of premium clients and consistent revenue growth. Don't wait. Your next big breakthrough starts with a simple conversation. Visit acarden.com and let's make it happen. Have an amazing day and God bless you.